Hi, and welcome to the training module on formatting your data in Excel. Now, formatting is usually more of an aesthetic part of Excel rather than a functional part of Excel. So, for this purpose, we're going to open the workbook called Formatting, and we're going to be looking at the first sheet called Formatting 1. And in this particular start of the module, we've got a list of data, and you can see it's quite extensive, where we've got our categories for our products, our actual products, their sales, and which quarter they fit into. If you have a look, this sheet goes all the way down to row 287, so it's quite an extensive worksheet, but at the moment not very readable. So the first thing we need to do is need to make sure that we can view all the data. So we need to be able to expand, make smaller or make larger of our rows or columns to make the data more visible and more professional. So to do this, you can either select the entire worksheet, which is this top left button over here, if you wanted to expand all the rows and columns to fit the data, or you can simply select the data that is currently being used and just double click. You'll see where your mouse changes in between the column headings. Double click and you will notice that the column headings will adjust according to the type of information you have in the cell. Now, although we've done this, it's still not very readable. So there's two ways of formatting this data. If you have a specific way that you would like to format it yourself, then what we can do is manually format the information. So let's quickly show you how we do this. The first thing we'd like to do is to put grid lines in here so we can see exactly what we're doing. So the quickest way to select all the data, if you select all the columns like we did with the changing of column, then what you would do is if you select all this data and we put in grid lines, keep in mind that even after the data is finished, the grid lines would continue, which is not a good idea when you start printing. So to be able to select only the data, you hold down the Shift button, select just your heading, and then Control Shift and you push the down arrow. This will now take you only to the bottom of your data block. From here we can now use this section to now format. On the Home tab, you've got various groups which are very relevant to formatting. We've got the first group, which is the clipboard group, and that's all about cutting, copying, pasting, which we'll learn in another module. The second group, which is the font group, and this deals with your fonts, font sizes, colors, as well as your borders and lines. Your alignment group, which deals with how your data is aligned on your data spreadsheet. Then you've got your number group. The number group is how your data is actually formatted. So is your numbers formatted as currency? Are they formatted as times? How do you want your numbers formatted? You've got your styles group, cells, and editing. But the most popular for formatting your information is the font, alignment, and number group. So the first thing we are going to do is create grid lines around, so it makes our table a little bit easier to read. So this is really option 1 if you wanted to customize how your particular table of data works. So over here I've got a border button in the font group, and I can choose what kind of borders I'm looking for. I'm going to choose all the borders so that all my lines have got borders. Then what I'm going to do is I would like to center and make bold my column headings. So you can select your column headings. We'd like to align the text to the middle. So in your alignment group, you've got this at the top, which is cell alignment. So this will align text to the top, middle, or bottom of the cell. And then you've got left, middle, and right. So in this case, I want to align everything into the middle. Then we would, in the font group, we'd like to change our font to bold, keeping in mind you've got italic, underline, and you can also change the font that you're using as well as the size of your font. In this case, we're going to go up one size to size 12. And then because it's a heading, it's a very good idea to shade in the heading, which makes it stand out that it is your column headings. So from here you can choose a nice light font. Be careful not to choose something too dark, otherwise you'd have to change your font color to make it easier to read. In terms of column A and column B, the text is fairly well formatted. However, the sales in column C don't really look like currency type information. So you've got two options when it comes time to formatting things like prices and numbers and data. You can choose the most common form to show that it is monetary value, irrelevant of which country you're in, and that is what we call a comma style format, which is in the number group. And that just gives you a nice format to show that you are dealing with currency type of information. If you want it specific to your country, you can see if you are in the short list over here, which is the accounting number format. We've got pounds, we've got dollars, and we've got euros. Or you can select more accounting formats and choose the one relevant to your country. And then for quarters, what we'd like to do here, just to make it look a little bit more professional, is just to middle align the data. So you'll notice that when I selected this column, the middle align was already selected. However, this data is not middle aligned. And the reason for this is because I previously center aligned my heading. So all you need to do is unselect it and reselect it for the data to align correctly. So that is basically how we do a basic formatting to our table. Now what I'm going to do is to show you how you can use something called a table to format your data. So I'm just going to go back and undo all the information so you can see exactly what it looked like before. And I also changed my rows. So I'm just going to increase my size, but just change my rows again so you can see how it originally looked. The most important thing with creating a table, which basically does all the formatting for you, and the only reason you would do this is if you weren't too worried about how the formatting looks. You can change it slightly and choose particular styles, but where you're not too worried about specific customized formatting. The most important thing when thinking about a table is to make sure that you are not clicked inside one of the blank cells in Excel, because then it will only format the cell you are clicked in. However, if you clicked in any of the blocks of data related to your data, it'll automatically select the entire block of data. So you click on any of the blocks that you're working with, go to the Insert tab on the main menu, and you will see that there's a button that is called Table. If you click on it, it'll automatically select all the data because our mouse was clicked somewhere inside the data. And very important, you need to tell the table this needs to be selected. My table has headers. This tells Excel that the very first row of your table are actually headings. If you don't select this, it'll create headings for you and call them column 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we click OK. It'll automatically format the data in terms of look and feel, but not so much in terms of column widths and currency formatting data. Now once you've created a table, you will notice at the top of your menu there's a new tab called Design. This is now everything related to your table. If you had to click off the table, you will notice that new menu tab disappears. Click back on the table and our Design tab is back to help us format our table. But before we can go ahead with these options, it's important for us to now increase or reduce the column widths to make our data fit. So we select all the columns and then double click. And then we also want to go ahead and change this to a currency style format. In this case, I'm going to use the comma style format. And then just to go back and have a look at your table tools, you've got various options. There's tools to summarize with pivot tables, to remove your duplicates. If you want to include external table data, you can use this group over here. And the rest of your design menu is purely for formatting. You can choose to remove your header row. You can choose to include a total row, which is quite useful. You can choose to remove banded rows. It's a lot easier to read if they're there. And then this is purely for emphasis. Do you want to emphasize the first column, maybe the last column, or do you want banded columns? And then you can choose if you want the filter button or not. Most of the time when you are looking at table information, the filter button is useful. If you're not happy with a particular table style, you can go ahead and change to different various colors or create your own table style if need be.